How do you manage to feed 200 residents 3 meals a day without ever running out of anything? Asked newly hired kitchen assistant Maria Santos as she watched head cook Thomas Mitchell coordinate the massive meal preparation at Sunset Manor Retirement Home with military precision that seemed impossible for someone working in a residential care facility kitchen. What Maria and the nursing home staff didn't know was that the man in the white chef's coat organizing their daily food service was former Army Quartermaster Sergeant Thomas Mitchell, who had spent 20 years managing logistics and supply operations that fed entire military bases in some of the world's most challenging operational environments. Thomas Mitchell, 42 years old, had been head cook at Sunset Manor Retirement Home for 4 years and 6 months, maintaining the same methodical attention to logistics coordination and supply management that had characterized his 20-year career as a U.S. Army Quartermaster conducting food service operations for military installations in some of the most remote and demanding locations on Earth. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., he arrived wearing standard kitchen attire, carrying meal planning equipment and nutritional protocols that he managed with military-level thoroughness developed during years of feeding thousands of soldiers daily. The nursing home staff and residents knew Thomas as the head cook who seemed to anticipate supply needs before shortages occurred, who somehow managed every aspect of institutional food service while maintaining constant awareness of dietary requirements and nutritional quality that impressed healthcare administrators with its accuracy and consistency. He had improved meal satisfaction ratings by 94% and earned recognition from both the facility administration and state health inspectors for exceptional food service management and nutritional care. What people didn't notice was Thomas's automatic supply assessment as he worked throughout the kitchen, the way he positioned inventory with optimal rotation schedules and waste minimization, the way he organized his food service operations with military-level precision that went beyond typical institutional cooking requirements. His approach to elderly care nutrition was comprehensive and systematically sophisticated in ways that suggested training beyond normal culinary or healthcare food service education. Thomas had chosen retirement home cooking specifically because it allowed him to use logistics and supply management skills to serve elderly residents in peaceful, healthcare contexts. After 20 years of Army Quartermaster operations that had required him to manage food distribution in conditions where supply failures could affect mission readiness and soldier welfare. His military career had begun in 1999 when he enlisted immediately after high school, initially planning to serve in combat or technical roles. But when he scored exceptionally high on organizational management and logistical planning evaluations, Army recruiters had suggested he consider quartermaster training, one of the military's most essential specialties that combined advanced supply chain management with food service operations and resource coordination. Army Quartermaster training was among the most comprehensive programs the military offered for logistics management. Nearly 3 years of intensive instruction that included everything from advanced food service management to supply chain coordination, inventory control, and nutritional planning techniques designed for feeding large military populations in diverse operational environments. Thomas had been one of only 12 candidates to complete advanced food service specialization successfully, and one of even fewer to serve operational assignments in high-demand military installations. Thomas's assignments had included logistics operations at bases in Germany, Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan, where he had managed food service for thousands of soldiers, coordinated supply deliveries under combat conditions, and maintained nutritional standards during deployments that required feeding military personnel in hostile and resource-limited environments. He had earned recognition for logistics excellence and operational efficiency that had contributed to successful food service operations supporting more than 50,000 soldiers across multiple deployments. Over multiple operational tours, Thomas had participated in logistics operations that included everything from routine-based food service to emergency supply coordination during natural disasters and combat operations, managing resources in conditions that ranged from well-equipped permanent installations to forward operating bases with minimal infrastructure. But the psychological pressure of years spent managing critical supply operations, always knowing that logistics failures could affect soldier welfare and mission success, had eventually become overwhelming. When Thomas completed his military service, he had been offered positions with defense contractors, corporate food service companies, and logistics firms that would have used his supply management expertise in industrial or commercial roles. But after years of high-stress military logistics, Thomas had chosen retirement home cooking because it allowed him to use food service and supply management skills to care for elderly residents rather than support military operations. Sunset Manor Retirement Home served 200 elderly residents requiring 3 daily meals plus snacks, specialized dietary accommodations, and nutritional care that supported health and quality of life for seniors with diverse medical needs and cultural preferences. Thomas's cooking responsibilities included all aspects of institutional food service, with particular attention to nutritional quality and dietary restrictions for elderly healthcare. During his 4 years at Sunset Manor, Thomas had developed comprehensive knowledge of elderly nutrition, dietary requirements, and food service coordination that impressed both facility administration and healthcare inspectors with its accuracy and practical effectiveness for senior care. "Thomas," said Facility Administrator Dr. Sarah Walsh during one of their regular nutrition meetings, "your food service management and supply coordination are exceptional. You seem to anticipate dietary needs and manage resources with efficiency that goes beyond typical institutional cooking capabilities." Dr. Walsh, "Resident nutrition is important to me. When elderly people trust us with their daily care, they should receive meals that support their health and provide comfort during their retirement years." What Dr. Walsh didn't realize was that Thomas's approach to elderly nutrition was based on military principles he had learned for Army Quartermaster operations, systematic supply management, continuous nutritional monitoring, and food service procedures that had been developed for much larger and more complex military feeding operations. The winter morning when Thomas's background was revealed began with a supply emergency that tested every aspect of his Army Quartermaster training. A severe snowstorm had disrupted food deliveries throughout the region, creating a supply shortage that threatened to leave 200 elderly residents without adequate nutrition during a natural disaster. The supply emergency occurred during the worst blizzard in 20 years, with roads closed and delivery trucks unable to reach Sunset Manor for potentially several days. The situation required immediate logistics coordination to prevent elderly residents from experiencing nutritional deficiencies that could affect their health and medical stability. Thomas was conducting routine inventory when the emergency supply situation became apparent. His Army Quartermaster training immediately activated. He assessed available resources, calculated nutritional requirements for extended isolation, and began implementing supply management procedures that he had hoped never to use for civilian elderly care. Thomas's response to the supply emergency was systematic and professional, based on techniques he had learned for logistics coordination and resource management during high-stress Army Quartermaster operations. He inventoried all available food supplies, calculated optimal meal planning for extended periods, and began coordinating alternative supply sources that would prove essential for maintaining elderly resident nutrition. Dr. Walsh, "We have sufficient supplies for 7 days if we implement emergency meal planning," Thomas said calmly as he reviewed his inventory calculations. "I can stretch our resources using logistics techniques that will maintain nutritional requirements while ensuring every resident receives adequate meals." Thomas's supply management was flawless. He had correctly calculated portion optimization, identified alternative protein sources, and developed meal plans that maintain nutritional standards while extending available resources to cover the emergency period. "Thomas, how did you calculate these supply projections so quickly?" asked Kitchen Supervisor Jennifer Chin as she reviewed his emergency meal planning. "Your resource management and nutritional calculations are extraordinarily detailed and systematic." Chin, "Emergency situations require careful planning and resource optimization. I've had some experience with supply management and food service coordination." But the facility administration team working with Thomas recognized that his logistics coordination demonstrated capabilities beyond typical institutional cooking. "Thomas," said State Health Inspector Robert Martinez, who had arrived to assess emergency preparedness, "your supply management and emergency food service planning are exceptional. You coordinated resources with professional precision that suggests specialized training. What's your background in large-scale food service operations?" Thomas hesitated, the way he always did when people asked about his logistics capabilities. "Some experience with food service management and supply coordination. I take resident nutrition seriously." But Dr. Walsh, who had extensive experience with military veterans, recognized that Thomas's performance suggested specialized training. "Thomas, what you organized was military-level logistics coordination. Your supply management and resource planning indicate advanced training in food service operations. Are you former military?" The conversation that followed revealed Thomas's Army Quartermaster experience and his reasons for choosing retirement home cooking over careers that would more obviously use his logistics expertise. Dr. Walsh, "I spent 20 years as an Army Quartermaster managing food service and supply operations for military bases. I retired and chose elderly care cooking because I wanted to use logistics skills to care for senior residents rather than support military operations. Inspector Martinez understood immediately why Thomas's supply management had been so professional and effective. Sergeant Mitchell, Army Quartermaster training is among the most advanced food service and logistics education available. Your expertise ensured these elderly residents maintained proper nutrition during a natural disaster. The supply emergency that Thomas had managed became the catalyst for conversations about how his Army Quartermaster training could benefit elderly care and institutional food service throughout the healthcare industry. During the week-long storm isolation, Thomas successfully maintained full nutritional standards for all 200 residents using optimized supply management that impressed state health officials and facility administration with its effectiveness and attention to elderly dietary needs. Thomas, said Regional Healthcare Director Dr. Michael Kim during a meeting the following week, your response to the supply emergency was extraordinary, and I've learned about your Army Quartermaster background. Would you consider working with our healthcare system as a consultant for institutional food service and supply management? Thomas was initially reluctant to take on responsibilities that reminded him of military logistics operations, but the healthcare consulting position offered a compromise between using his expertise and maintaining the peaceful elderly care work that had been essential for his transition from Army service. Dr. Kim, I chose retirement home cooking specifically to step away from military logistics operations. Thomas, this wouldn't be military supply management. We need someone to develop institutional food service protocols and train kitchen staff in advanced nutrition and supply coordination for elderly healthcare facilities. Thomas accepted the position as healthcare food service consultant while continuing his cooking duties at Sunset Manor. The combination allowed him to use his Army Quartermaster logistics expertise to improve elderly nutrition throughout the healthcare system while maintaining the direct resident care that provided meaning and satisfaction. Thomas's food service protocols for regional healthcare facilities emphasized practical nutrition techniques that enhanced elderly health without creating cost burdens or restricting dietary variety. His training sessions taught kitchen staff, healthcare administrators, and nutritional coordinators how to improve food service efficiency while maintaining healthcare environments that supported elderly comfort and nutritional well-being. The goal, Thomas explained to healthcare staff during one of his training sessions, is creating nutrition programs that support elderly health and happiness. Good food service should enhance quality of life rather than just meet minimum dietary requirements. Thomas's work with healthcare food service led to him developing protocols that were adopted by elderly care facilities throughout the state, improving institutional nutrition and food service management for thousands of senior residents requiring specialized dietary care and nutritional support. 6 months after managing the snowstorm supply emergency, Thomas received recognition from both the American Healthcare Association and the Army Quartermaster Association for developing civilian applications of military logistics techniques for elderly care and institutional food service. But the recognition that meant the most to Thomas came from elderly residents and families who had benefited from the nutrition protocols he had implemented. Thomas, said resident Eleanor Rodriguez during the facility's appreciation dinner, your cooking has made our daily meals something to look forward to rather than just institutional food. You've brought restaurant quality and home-style comfort to our retirement years. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm just glad you and the other residents enjoy your meals and receive proper nutrition. Food service is about helping elderly people maintain health and find daily pleasure during their retirement years. Thomas realized that Eleanor's gratitude reflected exactly the kind of meaningful work he had hoped to find after leaving Army service, using his logistics expertise to improve elderly care while enabling senior residents to enjoy nutritious and satisfying meals during their retirement years. A year after the supply emergency that revealed his background, Thomas had become the region's leading expert in institutional elderly nutrition and was regularly invited to speak at healthcare conferences and food service events about applying military logistics training to civilian elderly care and healthcare food service. His presentation at the National Healthcare Food Service Conference focused on the principle that had guided his approach to elderly nutrition. Army Quartermaster training provides systematic approaches to food service and supply management that can dramatically improve elderly nutrition when adapted appropriately for healthcare facilities. 2 years after managing the snowstorm crisis, Thomas continued cooking at Sunset Manor while also serving as healthcare food service consultant for the entire regional healthcare system and trainer for elderly care facilities throughout the area. His story was featured in military publications as an example of how logistics skills could be applied to civilian elderly care, inspiring other quartermaster veterans to consider careers that use their expertise to benefit senior residents and healthcare nutrition. Today, Thomas Mitchell continues cooking at Sunset Manor Retirement Home while also consulting with healthcare facilities throughout the region. He still arrives every morning at 4:30 a.m., still manages food service with systematic attention to nutritional quality, and still treats elderly resident care as a serious professional responsibility. But he also develops nutrition protocols that improve elderly health and happiness, trains healthcare kitchen staff in advanced food service techniques, and coordinates with facility administrators to ensure that elderly care institutions provide optimal nutrition during retirement years. The dining room where Thomas feeds 200 residents daily displays a small plaque that reads, "Dedicated to excellence in elderly nutrition." Thomas requested that the recognition honor nutritional care rather than individual cooking skills. Thomas's story reminds us that Army Quartermaster logistics expertise doesn't diminish when applied to civilian elderly care, it enhances. That military food service training can improve healthcare nutrition just as effectively as it supports military operations. That the same supply management skills used for feeding soldiers can be used to provide excellent nutrition for elderly residents during their retirement years. The next time you visit an elderly care facility, remember Thomas Mitchell. Remember that the kitchen staff caring for senior residents might have logistics experience gained in conditions and situations you can't imagine. Remember that they might have chosen elderly care cooking not because they lack other qualifications, but because they've found meaningful ways to apply extraordinary skills to serve senior residents. Sometimes the most important logistics operations happen not on military bases or supply depots, but in retirement home kitchens where former Army quartermasters choose to use their expertise to ensure that elderly residents receive excellent nutrition and food service that supports health and happiness during their retirement years. Sometimes the greatest supply management expertise belongs to people providing elderly care rather than supporting military operations, people who've chosen to apply Army Quartermaster training to civilian healthcare, ensuring that skills developed for military logistics can be used to improve elderly nutrition and quality of life. We need to recognize and appreciate the skilled logistics professionals among us who've chosen to serve quietly, especially those whose previous service required managing military supply operations so that elderly residents could safely receive excellent nutrition and care in peaceful healthcare environments. Because true logistics expertise doesn't disappear when military service ends, it just finds new applications. And sometimes the most valuable supply management training involves not military operations or base logistics, but elderly care that ensures the systematic food service skills developed for Army Quartermaster operations can be used to improve elderly nutrition and strengthen communities through excellent health care that creates comfort during retirement years and gives senior residents the dignity of excellent daily nutrition.